Alright, so separation of concerns is where each page, each file in your site has one specific task. This BMI.php is actually the HTML page that the users will interact with. So we don't want to have PHP calculation logic in here. We want to pull that out and put it in a separate file. And the way to do that is to use classes in PHP. So we're actually going to create a new file in here, and we're going to call it, we're going to call it a BMICalc.php. Okay, we'll create our PHP tag. We don't need the closing tag at the end of a file, and put ourselves a nice little comment to say this class is for calculating BMI from height and weight. Alright, so like lots of good programming languages, we declare a class with the class keyword and the name of the class, not class. And the convention, of course, is that the name of the class is the same as the name of the file. That makes it very easy to remember what the class is called and the file is called when we need to use it. Now we're going to create a very simple beginning here. We're going to start with one variable which is called BMI, and it's protected. So protected means that in a particular class, any code that calls the class cannot access this variable directly. They can only do it through the class interface itself. So in order to interact with that BMI, we're going to create a public function. So it's public, which means people will be able to call it directly. And we're going to call it calculate. And in order to calculate the BMI, as I've set up here, we need the height and the weight. Oops. So if the calling program calls BMICalc arrow calculate, that gives us the height and the weight, then what we can do is populate the BMI variable of the class, the property of this class, with the correct calculation. Now we've got that over here, so it's the weight divided by the height squared. So I'm actually just going to copy that and paste it in here, and then update this part. Okay. Now, it doesn't matter which order height and weight are in, so long as the same order that we expect them in is the order that they're passed in. Sometimes it's hard to keep track of those things, so one way that programmers use to get around this is to always put your variables in alphabetical order. So not very scientific, but at least consistent. Of course, modern IDEs can help you with all the parameters that you're passing into functions and so on, but we're just going to go for now with alphabetical order. So what's happening here? Well, the height and weight that are passed into this are used in this calculation, and that is stored back here. So let's look at how we're actually going to use our class. So instead of having our BMI variable as just a number that has the BMI value in it, Instead, we're going to create an instance of the BMICalc class. Okay, so now we'll have this object called BMI that is of type BMICalc. So it will have a member property called BMI, and it will have a member function called calculate, and we'll be able to use those. Now, we haven't quite got there. Let's see what happens if we just call this code right now. So we'll refresh our page. We've still got these form elements selected, so we can still use them. We'll actually get an error here that says class BMICalc not found on line 9. Let's have a look at line 9. Line 9 is where we tried to create an instance or instantiate our class. Of course, there's nothing here to tell this program anything about BMICalc. All of that is in this other file. So what we need to do is tell our page about our class. So we can do that using the include keyword. And we can either use it as a function by passing in the name, or as you could see there, we got a prompt to just use it as a statement, which is more correct. Alright, so now that we've included that page, as the interpreter is coming down, we'll open up this page, find out all about the class, and then we can use an instance, or we can create an instance of the class. So now when we refresh our page, nothing's happened, but we haven't got any error messages. If I was to echo out our BMI object here, curious. Alright. Of course I haven't commented out that line yet. So what I actually want to do, instead of allocating this, what I actually want to do is I want to call our new calculate function. And I want to pass to it 2 parameters. We want to pass to it the weight, and we want to pass to it the height. We don't need to square it, that's all happening. Alright, so we're giving it the weight that's passed in the get array, and the height that we've calculated here. And we're going to get rid of that calculation too, but let's see what's happened. Alright, so you can see that now BMI is a calculate object. Whoa, that doesn't look very good, does it? Let's sort that out. We've got weight. Oh, we haven't got them in the right order, alphabetical order. So, see, at least I knew, because they're not in alphabetical order. So hopefully we've now got our value that we were looking for before. Alright, you can see that BMI is of type BMICalc. It's an object, and that object has one property, which is called BMI, and it's protected, and there it is. Now, there are so many different ways. Yes, I'd like to say that there is one way, and this is the way you should do it, but I'm not sure that there really is. So this is the way that I'm going to show you to do it. And when I say it, of course, I mean using our class to do all of the things that we want. So let's just start by setting up some variables that we might need. So I'm going to create a variable called height, and I'm going to create a, in fact, I'm going to create a variable called height in meters, and I'm going to create a variable called height centimeters, and I'm going to create a variable called weight, And inside my calculate function, I want to pass in the meters part and the centimeters part. And the reason I'm calling them major and minor is I'm going to use the same variables when the user selects imperial. So we've got feet and inches. Here we've got meters and centimeters. So I'm going to use the same variables regardless of which unit we're measuring. And so let's be consistent. Let's be consistent here. Major, minor, weight, BMI. And the other thing we need is units. We'll come back to units in a second. Alright, so when the calculate function is called, what we're going to do is we're going to allocate these three variables into these three variables. So let's have a look at that. So the value that was passed into the function gets allocated to the member property. There's the second one, and we'll do the same with the weight. Alright, now we can use the same ones that were passed in. We put a here. Alright. So this variable is now going to hold the calculated height in meters. Doing a lot of backspacing. Alright, so now we can get rid of this calculation here. Alright, so we know that the major part is already in meters, and we're going to add the minor part divided by 100. So if 80 was passed in, it becomes 0.8. If 78 was passed in, we've got 0.78. So we'd end up with 1.78. which is exactly what we need for here. Now notice that I've just separated these out, so these are user passed variables. These ones here, calculated variables. You don't need to separate them out, but sometimes it helps you when you come back to your class later to remember what it is that you were doing. Alright, so let's, we haven't made any changes here, or let's actually, we do need to pass in our height 1, so let's do that. And we also need to pass in our height 2, so we can do that. And we've got our weight. So now we can get rid of that, we can get rid of that. So now our calling page, our display page, is very simple. Create an instance of our class, and we've called our calculate function. So let's see what happens now. Oh, what's going on here? Undefined variable height on BMICalc line 29. Let's have a look and see what we did wrong. Line 29, maybe you saw it before. Okay, so we actually need this height. That goes in there, that goes in there. Maybe let's be consistent and put our weight in here too. So these are now coming from our class properties rather than these passed in values. So this these three lines here, if we wanted to, we could add in some validation. Are they within a specific range? Are they of the right data type? All those kinds of things. That's a little beyond what we're doing today. Let's finish off this video just by confirming for ourselves that what we expected to see, we see. So here's what was passed in: major, minor, and weight. We've got our height that's been calculated, and we've got our BMI. So we're on our way to being able to fill up this stuff over here.